and bring it about so that we can carry this struggle forward. So we are thankful for this opportunity to do that. Today, we're talking about Chapter 6 of a guide for organizing defense against white supremacist, patriarchal, and fascist violence, the book that I was fortunately able to write and produce and publish this past February. And Chapter 6 is once your community defense project is underway. So we'll start this with our introductions, as we always do. Ajamu is my name, organizer with the All African People's Revolutionary Party, going on 38 years. And I don't mean half-ass 38 years membership. I mean actively working 365 days a year for 38 years to build this organization all over the world, and honored to do so, and hope I have another 38 years. Probably not, but as long as I do have, that's what I'm going to be doing. And my daughter, my only child, Shakura, who is here with me, spiritually, we're not in the same place physically. We will be shortly, though, and I can't wait for that to happen. But spiritually, we're here. And she is also a very effective and sincere organizer in the All African People's Revolutionary Party, as well as finishing up her studies where she is, which will make her the first person to achieve the title of doctor. And we're not against the title of doctor, because some of our best were doctors. Dr. Frantz Fanon, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, Dr. Angela Davis. So we're not against being a doctor. We just want the doctor to be for the masses of humanity, because that's why the people sacrificed for them to get the degrees in the first place. And Shakura, fortunately, understands that clearly. So we're honored for the progress she's making, because the progress she makes with her education is an advancement for the masses of people. It's not just for her individually. She understands that she would not have it if it were not for the sacrifices of the masses. So it's not her degree personally. This was a confusion in the capitalist system. It's not hers personally. It doesn't personally belong to her. It belongs to the masses of people, and her responsibility with the education is to use those skills, of which she has many, to advance our struggle for progress. So thankful to share this space with her. As always, the All African People's Revolutionary Party, our objective is Pan-Africanism, one unified socialist Africa. You can find out a lot more about that in the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, which is basically our model for how we do our work, which is on the right. I encourage you to check that out, and then go to our website, aprp-intl.org, to understand who we are and what we are doing. And we have chapters everywhere, building more and more each day, and relationships with all other liberation movements fighting for justice for humanity. So today we're going to talk about Chapter 6 of my book, Community Defense Work Once It's Underway, what that looks like. It's really going to be about methodology for how to engage in the work. We're really in the core part of the book now, the meat part of the book. So if you're really serious about, like, how do I do work to address these problems, then this is definitely for you. And so we'll start. I'll turn it over to Shakura to get us started.
Greetings, everyone. Hoping that you are the best that you can be at this time. Thank you so much for joining us. I remembered an experience that I want to share with you before I get started with these wonderful slides that we have for you all tonight. But just to further illustrate how much I do understand that when you are in petty bourgeois circumstances, academic institutions, things of that nature, it is really important to try your best to unlearn that petty bourgeois ideology, because as my dad just said, I do understand that this is not my degree, and my story will further support how much of my position I understand that to be. So I started this program 3 years ago. It is a 4-year program, and I do hope to wrap it up hopefully within a year or so of this time right now. So that's to be determined, but I will finish. It's not a question of when. Actually, it is a question of when, it's just not a question of if. So I'm grateful for that because I've completed 75% of the program at this point. So just pushing through the last couple of percentages. But when I first was accepted 3 years ago, I mentioned to you all that I'm very active with a few different organizations here in Tennessee. And so one of them focuses on giving chest feeding and breastfeeding support to African women who identify here in the Memphis city limits. And so I found out via email that morning, and I messaged my friend and told them, and I was so excited. I wanted to tell this person, and she was really happy for me. And then I had the meeting that night, the B-Stars meeting that night. And so usually when we introduce ourselves at the B-Stars meeting, we, talk about how many children we have, how long we've been nursing, whatever. Obviously, I always say I don't have any children and I haven't been nursing yet, but I plan to one day. And then everybody laughs. And then I wanted to tell them, and I want to share this news with you all, because you all are my community. You all are my people. I want to celebrate with you. I don't want to celebrate by myself. This is not my accomplishment. It is our accomplishment. And so I told my friend, I really want to tell this when I introduce myself tonight. And so my friend took it upon herself to tell my mentor, who made a whole PowerPoint presentation and added a slide about me into this PowerPoint presentation. So the facilitator of the meeting ended up announcing that I had been accepted into this program. I didn't get to tell my own news, which I was like, oh man, I didn't get to do that. But even then, because we've been trained from a capitalist standpoint that we need to celebrate ourselves because we have pulled ourselves up by our bootstraps, when that could not be farther from the truth, I immediately had to reverse that, because when the person showed the slide and announced that I had been accepted, everybody started clapping and everybody turned around and they were like, congratulations, you did it. And I'm like, no, I didn't. Like, it was the universe, it was God, it was my parents, it was my ancestors. I put a little bit of work in. Yes, I can say that, but this is our celebration. And this degree is not my degree, it's our degree. And I literally said that to them that night. As they were trying to highlight me, I highlighted them right back. And I said, you all understand just as much as I do how important this work is. And so however we all can go about collecting whatever tools, resources, trinkets we need to collect so that we all can collectively make a difference, so be it. This is not my degree, it is our degree. And I just pray that I don't let you all down. And my dad can tell you, he wasn't at that meeting, but he was at my master's public health degree graduation. And I said the same exact thing to my family then. They came from all over the world, and I literally broke down crying and I said, I'm doing this for you all. I'm not doing this for me, because I'm okay with where I am. I just think that the masses of people everywhere is unsettling to me. To see people struggling because they have melanin in their skin, or to see people struggling because they identify as not heterosexual, to see people struggling because they identify as women. That's unacceptable to me. No one should have to struggle because of those conditions. That is unacceptable to me. And all the isms and systems of oppression that exist are bullies, and we need to take them down, just like we would do if we were on the playground, if we were all in elementary school or middle or high school. So I just appreciate you all so much for just continuing to work with us and doing this work, because all of us have work to do, and it's going to take all of us to help dismantle these systems of oppression. So I thank you all so much for being here with us. Now let's talk about community defense, okay? So community defense equals people working together as a collective leadership. And I know you've heard us say that before, but it bears repeating, because what this means is that it's reminding one another of our value. So what do I mean by value? Value is two parts. So value as in both where we come from value, but also, our value and where do we want to go? Meaning we have the agency, we have the ownership and how we want to drive this organization forward. It's never going to be one person making decisions about when the collective meets. It would never be one person making decisions about how much dues are. That would always be numerous people having a voting process and making those decisions from a democratic centralism standpoint, so that each person can not only feel heard, each person can also be heard, and each person can contribute collectively to the conversation. Because the reason we emphasize DC democratic centralism and also this idea of people working together is because if everyone contributes, then the outcome, whatever the discussion is going to be suited in everyone's best interest, because at some point, everyone's going to find a way to work together. You might have to, bend the rules a few minutes at this point, or maybe meet halfway at another point. But from a majority standpoint, each person is for the most part going to be heard. And so therefore, whatever the outcome is, it's going to try to be as equal as it can be, so that each person that contributed has a feeling that their say was considered in the decision, and then they don't feel left out. Now, the problem with not doing it that way is when you don't do it that way, not everybody contributes. And then usually, if you've done this work for the amount of time that we have, usually when people don't contribute, those are also the same people who want to complain. And I've never understood that. So with the party and what the party is guiding you all to do as you all do this work, is to remember that that collective leadership, that collective organizing is super, super important. We really want to encourage everyone to contribute and speak up. We want to encourage people to speak their mind. We want to encourage people to participate in the voting process, whatever that may look like, because that is reminding all of us how to do this work and how to work together, which some of us do not know how to do. Some of us do not know how to work together. Some of us never understood why we needed to share the Play-Doh in kindergarten. Some of us didn't even go to kindergarten, and some of us didn't have Play-Doh when we went to kindergarten, okay? So we need to understand that even as adults, we still need to practice that. We still need to practice that. You know why? Because if you don't, then you are what we call an elitist, which means you're getting in the way of us reaching the struggle and reaching the freedom and the organizing tactics that we want to reach. To get there, you're going to get in the way of us doing that, because you're not going to understand why everybody is not making it about you. And that's not up for discussion. We don't have time. We don't have time for that. So we want you to practice learning how to work together now, which means being in organizations where you might not always get your way with something, but hopefully if the organization has a collective base, then they will understand that we should try really hard to figure out how we can make all parts of this puzzle piece touch on what each person has said, so that each person can have even a glimpse of what they thought the outcome could be, because we have now taken a little bit of everyone and created a whole new pot of something, versus just ignoring those who didn't speak up, or ignoring those who did speak up and not making everyone feel valued. So it's really important, because that also helps us build accountability. It helps us build reliability. There's some dedication skills that are developed with that. And most important, discipline. Discipline is another skill a lot of us really need to craft out. We really need to work on that. We don't have discipline, partly because of our technology day and age, but also just because of our elitism and because of our privilege. So we definitely need to remember that discipline means that you're going to have to work really hard on building skills to work with other people. That means learning how to communicate effectively. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. That means learning how to listen and not speak or respond sometimes, so that you can actually process what the person is saying, not just hearing what they say, because there's a difference between hearing and listening. So not just hearing what they say and then responding, because then you're not really processing what they said, but actually listening, meaning the active participation of taking the words that were just entered into your ear canal, processing them, thinking about them, and then when the time is appropriate, responding. So maybe if the person is speaking to you, maybe you don't respond, because maybe they really just need you to listen. Okay, we have this situation going on where we're going to be meeting in about 20 minutes to talk about what our next community defense is going to be. Now, I would like to do this, but I was wondering, would you be able to just listen to some of the feedback of the participants that come? Okay, that would be an example of just listening, versus being able to distinguish between when you need to act on something and respond versus just taking it in. If you're facilitating to do minutes for that day, that would be another example of that. Now, am I saying people take minutes can't contribute? No, I'm not saying that, but clearly we need some very detailed minutes so that we can have a foundation for how we're moving forward, and we can also be held accountable for what people volunteered to do. So that means we need the minutes taker or the scribe, whoever you are, we need you to be on top of it, which means active listening skills so that you can take the information, jot it down in a timely manner so that we can have it to build our foundation off of, especially if we end up sharing those minutes with another organization, because we're trying to help them get off the same ground that we're on. So it's also important for us to do this collective work, because it humbles us to do this work, and it also highlights why the work matters. So I don't know about you, but the more you do this work, the more you understand how needed the work is, but you also get to celebrate the victories that you find along the way because of the work that you have been doing. What do I mean by that? What I mean is, as you are doing this work, we understand, for example, that colonization and neo-colonization needs to end. We all understand that. You wouldn't be listening to this call if you didn't understand that. But that also means we are working to end colonization and neo-colonialism, yes, but we're also working to celebrate the fact that we have countries like Ghana and Cameroon who have reached independence. So that is exactly why we're doing this work, because we want Africa to be free. We want Africa to be free. When we say that, we mean we don't want nobody there that doesn't have good intentions for the continent thriving, which means putting Africans first. That's what that means. So we have to celebrate the fact that Kwame Nkrumah and everyone in Ghana worked so hard. He was able to organize thousands of people to work in getting Ghana the independence that it needed. So that's why this work is so important, because we get to actually see successes. And I'm so humbled that Kwame Nkrumah wrote the book, Ghana, and that's one of our books on our work study reading list. So I was able to read about that experience, take all the steps into precaution and think about how this person was able to organize these people to do this, and then see it happen. And even though I went to Ghana when I was 4, I haven't been back since then. But when I go back now as an adult, now that I've actually read this book that this comrade wrote, I'm going to process it a lot differently when I go back. I'm going to process it so much differently, because I now understand how much effort and energy went in for them to get the colonizers out. And so now I can go back home and actually benefit from being where I deserve to be without worrying about somebody else being in my house per se. So that's just one example of that. The second point I'll talk about is we want to make sure that we are building work based upon the people the work is designed to uplift. So not you and not anyone else whose personalities just happen to initiate this work. What does that mean? So just like the masses of people make history and their story and her story, masses of people benefit the work, and the work should always benefit the masses of the people. If at any point in time leadership takes over and frames the work to benefit one individual, the collective should be organized enough to watch for signs of this and have an organized plan on how to deal with it immediately so it does not develop larger. The frame of work can never change, because basically if you're thinking about a car, the car is the work that you all are doing to organize, right? And the direction the car is going in is how progressive your work is happening, okay? So if the car is traveling in the direction to help the people become free, then when that direction changes, you're either going to make a U-turn and going to have to go backwards, which means now you're picking up more laborious tasks to have to go through all of that all over again. Not to mention, you're further oppressing the same people that you're trying to reach a state of freedom so that they can have their land and their power back. So we have to think about how this work is supposed to be designed for the people. That can never not be the objective. It has to always be the objective. So if you're training a dog and you want to make sure that the dog is eating the treats that you're giving them, or maybe you want to make sure they're not having an accident inside, you have to constantly remember your objective is to take them out repeatedly whenever they drink or eat something, so that they can understand and associate the grass with using the bathroom. It would be the same thing with organizing. It should always be about the people, and it should never, ever, ever be about one person. Because as I just said, the masses of people benefit the work, meaning the work won't get done without the people. And so by default, that means that the work should always benefit the people, right? Because those two go hand in hand. The last point I'll talk about is that an organizer does work to create and develop leaders for the work. A leader is the face of the work and guides specifics of the work. So we have to be able to draw out the differences between these two. If you pull from the quote on page 61, if the masses don't own the work, it will never advance, end quote. So I took that to mean that people need to be driving the organization forward. This is another reason why the maintenance and stability of the organization cannot rely on just one person and their leadership. So we wouldn't have come as far as we've come if that were the case. Each organizer is noble and understood that their job was to help share knowledge, wisdom, and advice to to help the mold and develop of new organizers coming after them. So just like you would if you were taking in a mentor or a mentee of some type. So then the new organizers who are being molded and developed and crafted by the older organizers, now they're understanding, okay, my job is to go out and to disseminate and to continue on this organizing work. And so that's where you may have the leader who is given a specific task and is over a specific task. And so just not understanding the difference between those two. I would encourage you all to discuss the difference and to apply the difference to an organizer versus a leader so that you can discuss among your specific organizations. Okay, we need to first understand that this is what an organizer does. This is what a leader does. And now we're going to need leaders for this particular part of the task force, and we'll need organizers for this particular part. And maybe at some point the two can come together, but for this part right here, we need to have this and this, and then we need to have that and that, and just making sure that it's clear with how you're talking about that. I would also encourage you, just going back to point 2, just real quick, there's also 2 points from page 59 that give really good detail about specifically point 1 and 2 that feed into the second point I was talking about. So if you have your book and you look at page 59 and read those 2 points, you'll understand why I was tying them in to the second bullet on the slide. Next slide, please. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is how it's important to understand we must practice patience with people and follow up. So this seems like such a simple thing, but it's really not. And the reason I'll tell you it's not simple for us, if you are a marginalized person in any way, shape, or form, this is not a simple task for you, because we must understand that our people are under attack. So if you identify as LGBTQ, you're under attack. If you identify as a woman, you're under attack. If you identify as being of color, you're under attack. Or if you were colonized, you're under attack. If you are poor, you're under attack. And so because we are under attack, we have not been properly trained, educated, or had the ability to develop organizational skills. That was never what we learned when we went to school. And some of us didn't even have an opportunity to be educated. And if we were educated under colonization rule and colonization knowledge of what they wanted us to know. So even that is being tainted beyond measure. So none of us have been able to truly develop organizational skills. And so because of that, this is an area that many people need more support in developing. Now, why would you need organizational skills to be a part of an organization? I'm glad you asked. So the organizer must take this into consideration when helping to develop the circle or organization, because people will need help. That's where the follow-up skills come into play. Although laborious and extensive, it is imperative for organizers to be patient and follow up with one another. Following up is how you apply multiple measures. So you as the organizer, you can apply multiple measures found on page 60 and 63 about what it means to test the effectiveness of your conversations. Because if you can test the effectiveness of your conversations with different people in the community, you may find that people are serious about doing the work, but have not had any training or opportunities to practice these skills. So they are rusty, for lack of a better term. Another way to think about this is you will be following up with them, and then that might enable them to develop the necessary skills that they might need to end up serving as a new admin organizer of your organization. But they have to be first taught how to do the said skills that we're asking of them. So this is where the patience comes in, because you might send out a calendar invite, and you might have sent out that calendar invite a whole month in advance before the meeting. And that would be really great. But some people are going to need more than just accepting that calendar invite. They might need 2 or 3 email reminders. They might need a text reminder. Maybe you start a group on Signal or Slack or GroupMe. Maybe you find a way to post something on Facebook. Maybe you print out hard copy flyers and tape them to the doors of the community houses and apartments and condos and townhomes that you're going to. Maybe you find a way to make sure that you have a communications person who is sending out these messages on social media, and maybe you have someone else doing the flyers and literally taping them to mailboxes or whatnot. But you've got to make sure that you are constantly reminding folks of what's going on, because as I said, capitalism has not allowed us to be structured and to think about structure and to think about how to apply structure as it relates to organizing. We will prioritize going to the doctor. And even then, some of us can't prioritize that because our jobs and other things get in the way. We may or may not prioritize going to our child's parent-teacher conference meeting. We might prioritize going to get ice cream if that's important to us, but a lot of us don't even know how to prioritize frivolous things like going to get ice cream. So why would we be able to prioritize going to a meeting that is literally designed to organize the masses of people? That would be really hard for a lot of us if we can't even commit to going to get ice cream on Tuesdays at 6 o'clock. So why would we be able to go to a meeting on Tuesdays at 6? So that means that the organizer is going to have to truly, truly, truly unpack that and understand that, and literally have that hanging over their head as they think about, I've sent out 3 calendar invites, now I'm going to send out 5 text messages. And part of that also means, understanding how people's mode of communication is. So for some people, it might be email. For other people, it might be a calendar invite. For other people, it might be a text message. For other people, it might be Facebook Messenger. Like, these are specific things that the organizer can try to collect when they're going around door to door and asking, oh, by the way, what's your preferred communication style? Just to make sure that you are getting the message out as many ways as possible. Because people communicate differently, if you send out text messages to a group of people that respond to email, then your message might go unreceived. And so then you as the messenger are not getting an effective response because your method of sending the message was ineffective, okay? So just thinking about how all of that fits into that. And then just keeping in mind, as I said, you might come across people who really want to do this work, but they need some help. So once you train them on how to be disciplined, once you show patience with them and teach them what it means to follow up, and you follow up with them repeatedly to the point where they understand the importance of following up, they might be able to step up and take that task off your plate and help with the organization. So then they become the people following up with people. But it's going to require some devotion and some attention to that detail. The second point I'll talk about is that you want to make sure that you understand that conflict is a part of life and cannot be avoided. Instead, we need the skills to learn how to work through conflict, but we shouldn't work on avoiding conflict. It continues to be disseminated through media that conflict is negative and should be avoided. This is not a trustworthy message, though, because capitalism has disseminated it. So we should already know we can't rely on that. Conflict enables people to grow, learn, and open their minds and build those brain muscles. Conflict causes uncomfortness because it highlights areas of confusion, mistrust, abuse, or exploitation. So we must encourage conflict because we have seen both on the inside of our organization and on the outside of our organization that conflict opens new doors for us to work closer to freedom. If you feel like you are a non-confrontational person, I encourage you to reflect on the timeline of the African struggle or any struggle that you respect and have studied and researched. So take Ghana, for example, because I love Ghana and I could talk about Ghana all day long. When Ghana worked to gain their independence from the British, how would you say that was possible without conflict? Ghana and the people of Ghana had to experience conflict in order to get the British colonizers out of their country, right? When Africans escaped the plantation, was that without conflict? If they hadn't escaped, they might have been killed. And then I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today because one of my ancestors could have been killed, which meant my lineage would have been ruined. Last example, when Africans were unethically researched and experimented on, was that done without conflict? Especially when they fought against it and in some cases overtook the researcher. So we have to think about how in our timeline and our thirstory and our herstory and in our history, conflict has been a part of what has literally caused momentous changes to occur. And so even though society and media teaches us that it's negative, it truly has helped many situations become better situations, because I know of the work my dad was doing with the community defense programs in Portland. They helped to remove some abusers out of some communities that obviously were perpetuating conflict. And then they took that same conflict and brought it to the abuser and said, we cannot allow you to do this anymore. So you have two choices. You can stop completely abusing people, or you will become the abused after that. And it's very simple what choice you decide to make. And so again, like, how do we use conflict to work through it? That's what we have to work on, which means being uncomfortable and remembering that it's okay to be uncomfortable. The last point I'll make, and I'll turn it over back to my dad, is that it's important to also practice helping people learn how to change expectations and expect a follow-up. We need to move away from normalizing flakiness and inconsistency. Higher expected outcomes consist of a better world. So it is understandable to have low expectations for capitalist entities, because those are untrustworthy. But you must start to train yourself to have expectations of the people, because not only is it necessary for you to have expectations of the people, but that is a survival skill, because we need to hold on to one another and be accountable and dismantle many of the older ideologies that we need to release and unlearn. So basically, untrustworthiness of one another, not being able to rely on one another, not feeling like you can depend on one another. Like, these are old concepts that the colonizer has taught us, and we need to really unpack those and release them if at all possible. Now, am I saying that all people of color are reliable? No, of course not. But if you make assumptions based off of capitalist, colonist, white supremacy, cis, hetero, patriarchal norms, you're never going to get anywhere. So you should at least try to give people the benefit of the doubt, again, assuming that they actually want to be in that space, because if they're taking time out of their schedule to show up mentally and physically, then they might have some integrity. And if they have some integrity, then you can build off of that, because that means that they're trying to do something, which means they understand that there are problems that need to be addressed. So I encourage you all to continue to work through this. Shout out to anybody who is a part of an organization trying to make a difference. And I look forward to talking with you all more as we continue to organize. Thank you.
Thank you, Shakura. And so, just continuing on, I think a good analogy to understand this part of the book would be to think of yourself as someone who has been kidnapped and forced into a room in a house. The room has four walls. There's nothing in the room except you. You don't even have anything to sit on other than the floor. And somebody comes in the room every day and tells you what's going on in the world outside of the room, but all you have to base your analysis on is what this person coming in the room every day is telling you. This is the challenge we have in terms of when we talk about revolution, transforming society, is that the overwhelming majority of people in this society, their level of understanding about the world, what's going on in the world, is the social equivalent to that person in the bare room. Most people, unfortunately, don't know much of anything about what's going on in the world. And so because we don't know, we don't understand how we interact with those forces around the world and how they interact with us. And so when we start talking about how we're going to address the problems, what you find when you do the work is that people, because they don't have that framework, they're all over the place. They have the best of intentions. They want to see change happen, but they just really struggle to be able to understand how to have a focus on what being able to make those changes would look like. So the conversations you have with people, and I ask people this all the time, what type of work do you want to do? What are the problems you want to address? And people will respond, well, mass incarceration, patriarchy is a problem, police are a problem, food deserts, lack of education. They go on and on. It's all this stuff. And because there's all this stuff that's all over the place, it's overwhelming. It becomes overwhelming for people. So what I find in the conversation is that it's really difficult for people to figure out like how to dissect, how to approach that. So I think what happens with most people is they just don't end up approaching it because they get overwhelmed by the concept. So the whole purpose of this book in general, and this chapter in particular, is to help folks figure out what steps to take to engage the problem that is so large, to break it off into small bits where that you can digest and tackle and do something about. And so that's the whole point. So when we talk about doing that, we want to give examples. We're talking about things like, I'm trying to figure out, this won't advance for some reason, capitalism, sabotage. Okay, so anyway, we're trying to talk about how to, approach this work on a piece by piece basis. So this chapter talks about the process to gather information for how you're going to organize in a community. Again, it's important to note your community it can be a 1-block community. It could be a 5-block, 10-block. There are no rules. You can start, because whatever you start with, you're going to build on. So you got to get rid of this bourgeois idealist notion that if you don't immediately start with 500 people, then you're not doing anything. Because that's our training under this capitalist system. Our training is that, whatever they provide us, that's what's important. What capitalism values, that's how you evaluate everything. So because they put Kanye West in front of us, they put R. Kelly, Bill Cosby, they put Dave Chappelle in front of us, then those are the people that are important. And whatever those people say, then that's what we need to listen to. Beyonce, Jay-Z, whoever the hell they put in front of us, that's what we believe. And you're a liar if you say that that's not what we believe. We all believe that on some level, some of us more than others. The capitalist system determines for us what is important. And because that's the process that we exist in, when someone says something like, well, we can organize with 2 people just by ourselves, then our training is that, well, that's not important because the system isn't recognizing that. So we don't think that's valid. But we just have to understand, like, you're looking in the wrong places for validation if you're looking at the system owned, controlled, and operated by our enemies to provide you the inspiration for how you're going to get free from that system. That math is never going to add up. So we have to develop a whole new way of looking at life. And so, yeah, 5 blocks, start there. And 5 blocks might be 800 people, for example. Maybe let's say 1,500 people. And so you got 1,500 people. And so your task is, in the earlier chapter, talked about how you develop a survey and you go door to door. You can, if you have 2 people, you can knock on, you can reach 1,500 people, because you're probably talking about, it's probably about 700-800 doors. You could do that. So you can knock on 800 doors. You can give yourself a month to do it, or whatever you need to do. And you have your questions, whatever your questions are, like they can be whatever questions you want them to be, but the focus of the question should be, what is important to you? Number 1. Number 2, what do you care about? Like, so what's important to you? An example would be, what's important to me that my children have safety. So what do you care about? Well, I'd like to see more safe spaces where our children could function and exist without, the fear that they would be harmed. So the third point that you want to find out is, so, okay, I know what you care about. I know what's important to you. Now, what are you willing to do to bring that reality into existence, to create these safe spaces? So whatever your survey is, it has to include those 3 components. All right. So once you have that, you go out and you're knocking on those doors. And your objective is that you want to say, if it's 1,500 people, y'all, or whoever's a math major, whatever 75% of that is, I don't know offhand. Let's just say 750 people. I'm probably wrong. I don't need you to put in the chat that I'm wrong. You get the point. The point is that you want to talk to a minimum of 75% of the 1,500 people, because that tells you that you have a dominant perspective in the community. And then you're looking at particularly that number 3 question, because a lot of people are great. They're going to tell you what the problems are, but it's crickets when it comes to what they're going to do about it. So you're looking for the people who are just as enthusiastic about telling you what they want to do about it as they are about identifying what's wrong. And so those people, out of that 75% or 750 people, using that number as an example, you're probably going to get 30, 40, 50 people who say, yeah, I want to do something about it. And you should not look at that like, well, that's a failure. We only got 40 people out of 1,500 people. That's what it's going to be. That's what the process is. And you have to understand what organizing work looks like. That's what it looks like. You know, it's not a celebrity type thing. And I've seen that to be a challenge, particularly with a lot of the wonderful people who have come out of the Black Lives Matter movement, for example. Like that whole movement was about these huge protests that are on TV. The people who were the voices of the protests, they're on TV. And so that's how they understand how struggle is supposed to progress, like around these individuals and creating like quasi celebrities. And I'm not criticizing that. That certainly has a place, but this is different type of work than that. And you have to understand that if you're gonna, understand what revolution is. Revolution is not about being on TV every day. Like Gil Scott-Heron said, the revolution won't be televised. This is a different type of work, and people have to understand that. When any type of organizing work is different. When you had Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, CORE, these organizations organizing in Mississippi, Alabama, if they would have been on TV every day, they would have been killed. They were not trying to be on TV. They were trying to work with people and build capacity outside of that vision. So, people have to understand that, because we are so confused. Like if nobody, you don't have 500 people here, then it must not be important. Well, that's because you've been, socialized by Hollywood, not by revolutionary work. This is totally different. We have to build up to that point. We don't get it automatically. If we got it automatically, we wouldn't even need to do it. Okay, so understand that. And then develop a process to assess the people you work with so that okay, I got 40 people, so I want to double back. I want to circle back to those people. And then you probably want to interview them further, because you would have told them once they told you, hey, and the book talks about this, once you told them, they told you what they were willing to do, then you tell them, okay, I'm going to, is it okay if I come back and talk to you? Yes, of course, they're going to tell you it's okay, because they want to do something. And you're the one giving them that bright light of what can be done. So you're going to come back, and then now you're going to talk to them about what their specific role could be. So now all of a sudden, your two people is going to become a lot more. If you do this work this way, that's exactly what's going to happen. And then so you focus on those initial 30, 40 people, and then you start talking about what it is those folks are going to do. And that's the necessary assignments. So you take those 30, 40 people, and you start looking at the areas of work that are going to need to happen. So they told you they want a safe space. So you're going to have meetings, because you want to, and events, because you want to inform the community about what you're doing. So you need, of those 30, 40 people, 3 or 4 of them to be on the committee that organizes the meetings and events. As we've said ad nauseum, you have to have a basis of political education. You can't just do this willy-nilly and then because you're pissed off because something happened, because that's not sustainable. The only thing that will sustain you is understanding of the forces at work that we need to change, why we need to change them, and understanding that. So that's political education. You gotta have another 3 or 4 people to ensure that part of the work is being done. You gotta organize resources to help you. So you got another 3 or 4 people. You get the point. You organize those 30, 40 people to carry out those processes and to create structures to make sure those things happen. That's what we're talking about in this chapter. And then, as we said, the political education needs to be a part of everything. And that's going to be hard, because nobody is going to want to do that. I'm telling you from experience, nobody is going to want to do. People do not like to read in this society. And a lot of people don't like to read because they struggle to read, and they don't want anyone to know that. And instead of us running away from that and trying to act like that's not a reality and pretending like that's not a real condition for a large percentage of people, we need to address it. Because I'm going to tell you one thing, we will never be free until that's addressed. You cannot point to any society in human history that has obtained freedom when the large percentage of the people were functionally illiterate. That is not a problem. It's not the fault of the people. It's a problem we can fix, but we can't fix it if we're pretending like it doesn't exist or it doesn't matter. we've got to get in there and do that. We've got to have literacy campaigns where we help people learn to read, where we take away this stigma because people can't read, because in capitalism it's a stigma, but we have to do the work to help people understand we're not here to make fun of you because you can't read. We're here to help you correct the problem. All we need from you is the desire. We can bring on all the resources, and in no period of time at all, you can be one of the best readers you know. Are you down with that? And the overwhelming majority of people will be. And so we do that work. And we have that as the basis of you can't capitulate to it. Well, I don't really want to read. Reading is for elite people. The people that talk like that are usually always the people who struggle with reading. And I've learned a technique, because you have people read out loud, you can determine who struggles. And it's always those people who are the most resistant to reading. And people are not going to be honest. Capitalism doesn't train people to be honest. They're not going to say, well, I don't want to have political education because I struggle to read. No one in my 4 decades of doing this work, not one person has ever said that. It's always, well, reading, I don't need to read. I know everything that I need to know. Reading ain't never helped me do nothing. Reading is for white people. It's always that kind of stuff, because people don't want to deal with the problem. So we have to confront that head on, because we got to get political education. We have to have revolutionary political education. And then we have to have a team, like I said, to build the meetings monthly and to do all those things and to coordinate the training, because we'll have de-escalations training, self-defense training, a whole bunch of things, writing training, art training, all of these things that are happening in your community defense work. If you're doing it like it should be being done. And so you need people to coordinate that. And those folks come from your 30 or 40 people who you met on the doors. They don't come from you trying to do everything. That's not the revolutionary organizing model, because the masses make history, and you're going to die one day, and we want the work to continue. So we can't just put it on you. I don't care I know you're great. I know you're wonderful, but it's not even feasible for us to allow individuals to carry the work. That's why revolutionary organizers, you don't even necessarily know them. You have celebrity activists who are in the news, and that's wonderful for them. But revolutionary organizers, that's not their objective. You don't even know who they are. You'll know their work, and you won't know them. You'll know their work, but you won't know them, because they're not concerned about you knowing them. They're concerned about building capacity to defeat this system. Okay? So that's what that is. The core principles of that work, like, you have to use them. Democratic centralism. And we're running out of time. I wish I could really give you, but if you read the book, it's all in there. But the point is, democratic centralism is a process that ensures that everybody's voice is always heard on every issue. And for those of you who think you understand democratic centralism, but you've never really practiced it, you can lie to people and say, well, I don't know, he says democratic centralism, I don't like that. You can lie to people that don't know any more about it than you do, but you will not be able to do that with us, because we practice democratic centralism. We study it and practice it. And I've sat in meetings for years where we practice democratic centralism, because that's our organizing principle in the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And so you have these long discussions, because people have to develop a comfort level with understanding the issue. And so you have long discussions back and forth. Most of you wouldn't have the patience for that, because you don't know how to practice real democracy. So you wouldn't even have any patience with hearing this back and forth. You want to get up and leave the room. But I understand that's what democracy looks like. And so you have long discussions. People ask questions that you feel like were answered an hour ago. That's what democracy looks like, you all. We all process information on different levels. So that's what it looks like. And so that's the democratic part of democratic centralism. The centralism part is, after every issue has been hashed, rehashed, debated, guns pulled out, all of that has happened, a decision has to be made. And once the vote is taken, whatever 51% of the people vote, it's 100% of the people's responsibility to carry out that decision. Whether you agreed with it or not is 100% irrelevant. It is a democratic, a respect for democracy, that you have a responsibility to carry out decisions that the majority agreed to, even if you didn't agree with it. And you have to be, when I've had that experience, which has been many times, I've given examples on this broadcast many times of that, I've been the hardest worker to carry out the decision. Because that way, if it doesn't work, now people are much better positioned to listen to my reasons as to why I opposed it in the first place. But if you sabotage it and don't participate, then all you're doing is justifying why people shouldn't listen to you about why you opposed it. So that's democratic centralism. I mean, please read the chapter, because people always tell me, well, democratic centralism is not good because of what the Bolsheviks did 100 years ago. Like, that is not, first off, I probably studied more about the Bolsheviks than you, because we study that consistently in our organization. And because I've studied it, I know that has nothing to do with us as African people. We have nothing to do with Russia and the Soviet Union and their model of the Communist International. That has nothing to do with us. And their model in the USSR, nothing to do with us whatsoever. So don't bring your European failure models to our African revolutionary cultural experience. You are not going to like our response if you try to do that. And people try to do that all the time, because all you know is the centering of European white people's experience. So if it didn't work for them, it must not work. But we know what democratic centralism is, and we're happy to educate people about it. So you got to have that. And democratic centralism is so important for the reasons that I mentioned, because that way you build democratic decision-making structures. And if you have that, people know that the work they're doing, they will buy into it, because they know that their voice is heard. There is no democracy in this society. I don't care how many times they tell you it's a democratic society. You have no decisions in anything that happens in the society of any substance. No decision whatsoever do you have it. I don't care how many times you vote and who you vote for, you will not have a say-so in what happens with anything in this society. You cannot point to anything that has happened in this society that you have been able to say through participating in their processes, well, this is how that happened. Don't tell me nothing about that, because the only reason we can vote is because we have to get our heads split open. So I'm not going to credit this system for that. I'm going to credit my ancestors who paid that price. That's where the credit goes. So they get zero credit. So there's no democracy. You can't argue that there's a democratic society and you got millions of people who have to get their heads busted just to participate in the society. And you're insane enough to argue, well, it's a free society. I mean, what kind of idiot would make that kind of argument? That's insane, you. I'm sorry. I mean, if that offends you, that's because you're the problem. Okay, no apology there. Like, you wake up, stop parroting what these people tell you all the time. All right. So everyone gets to do the work, and the effectiveness of doing that, we got to do away with this security culture thing. That's poison. I mean, you don't get, who the hell are you to determine who gets to do the work? Everybody gets to do the work. We're a mass political party. We're not trying to screen people out. And I don't have time to go into it deeper, but talk about it in depth in the book. I lived in Portland, Oregon, and organized there for a while. And that's the security culture capital. And nobody is any more safe there than they are anywhere else. I mean, it has been an absolute failure to base organizing work on security culture. It is an absolute failure. It does not work, and it's very elitist. So that's what we talk about in the book. I know that ruffles feathers good. That's a good organizer supposed to ruffle feathers. And principal ideological struggle is the tool that negates the need for something like security culture. We don't have security culture in the APRP. We don't need it, because we have an ideological political education process that utilizes criticism, self-criticism, and democratic centralism. So we don't need superficial tools to do that. So again, these are just some of the elements that are in this chapter that talk to you in specifics about how to do this organizing work. It's really good stuff, you all. And I just want to close. I want to go back because it's worth repeating again, because it's very important. This month is 55-year commemoration of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense out of Oakland, California, real close to where I am. And I would not be here. I had Black Panther Party members who shaped my life. And a lot of them were active in the APRP after their time in the Black Panther Party. And I just want to say those names because I probably forgot some the first time, and there are so many of them. So I just want to say them before I let you go. And first, I want to recognize Kwame Ture, formerly Stokely Carmichael, National Prime Minister for the Black Panther Party. David Brothers, former Central Committee member, APRP, founder, New York Black Panther Party chapter. I want to recognize Sister Charlotte O'Neill, Pete O'Neill, Arusha, Tanzania, from Kansas City Black Panther Party chapter. Really still love spending time with them in Arusha, Tanzania. Want to recognize my brother-in-law, Kweku, LA Black Panther Party chapter. Want to recognize all the Sacramento Black Panther Party chapters Black Panther Party branch members who raised me up. Brother Omawali, who we lost last year, respect. Brother Akin Sanya Cambone, who mentored the hell out of me and still to this day does so. Respect. Sacramento Panthers, Oakland Panthers, Brother Santeria, who is a friend and mentor and helps me. Brother Kent Ford from the Portland Black Panther Party, who is a good friend and mentor. There are so many. Sister Gloria Abernathy, Sacramento Black Panther Party chapter. I would not be here doing what I do if it was not for them. I owe everything to these folks. So if you know any Panthers, respect to them, give them respect. Stop giving respect to people that don't deserve it, like Colin Powell. Like, what kind of, man, y'all, I mean, we are absolutely insane. Colin Powell, rest in peace. Burn in hell for all the people you killed. And if that shocks you to hear that, then you're the problem. Should burn in hell. He didn't have any remorse for all the people he killed. I don't care where his soul is. If his body was out in front of my house, I'd set it on fire. And if that offends you, then God damn it, that's a good thing on a Sunday. So join us next Sunday, please. We have our Ancestors' Voices, Sunday, November 7th. We're going to go through the chapter 7, a guide for organized defense against white supremacist, patriarchal, fascist violence. We're going to talk about connecting community defense work to other work internationally. So join us for that. Tell people you want to join the APRP, go to aprp-intl.org. We encourage you to do that. You can come to my site. You can curse us out. You won't be alone doing that. That's my site at betterworld.me. Donate while you're there. All of these sessions are tape recorded there. You can go back. You can refer them to people. We encourage you to do that. There's articles there that I've written. And that's where you'll find all the fans that are out there that want to do me harm. And that's fine. Hoodcommunist.org is a wonderful blog of African revolutionaries, support African, like I saw this, support Black businesses, support Native businesses. You know what? Support Native organizations organizing to get indigenous people's land back. To hell with the businesses. Support African revolutionary organizations. To hell with most of these Negro businesses are no different than any of the other capitalist business. I'm sorry, it's the truth. It's the truth. So you can find some good ones and support them. And I've done that for years, but don't give me this blanket thing. That's, just to support people working in capitalism. That's not, I'm not doing that. I don't care if just because you look like me, that means nothing. Some of my best friends don't look like me. Some of my closest comrades don't look like me. And some of my biggest enemies look exactly like me. Some of them in my own family. So, this is class struggle, y'all. Y'all got to understand that. So Hood Communist is a revolutionary African media source. We come out with new articles every Thursday. Check it out, hoodcommunist.org. We have a Telegram event. You can download the album on your smartphone free. And we do that every other Thursday. So it'll be 2 weeks from last Thursday. We'll do it again. So check it out. We have all those broadcasts on the bottom there that you should join. Pantula, Revolutionary African Women, Forward Ever, Comrades in New Mexico do the Thursday newscast. These are all APRP sponsored programs, just like this one. So check them out, you all, and continue to buy the book, A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. I broke some of my training tools, the fake weapons I have to train people on how to disarm people. So, the money people that I get from people buying the book, I spend it on that kind of stuff because I've gone through like 4 different toy guns, and I'm gonna have to continue to do that, as well as a whole lot of other stuff I can tell you about. So continue to buy the book. You're not gonna make me rich, but you're going to contribute to the struggle for justice and liberation for all of humanity. I don't want to be rich. All I want is the power of the organized masses. I do not want to be rich. Okay, I know nobody in a capitalist America ever says that. I don't want to be rich. I want to organize the masses for power. That's what we want, because we know that patriarchy is an evil system that has to be destroyed. We know that white supremacy is evil. It's got to go. And y'all already know that capitalism's got to go. Have a great rest of your Sunday evening. Forward ever, backwards never. Stay strong.